So this is JoJo Bizarre Adventures, Eyes of Heaven. Been meaning to play this for quite some time, and I'm not gonna lie. Um, I'm not like a diehard Iraqi fan, but at the same time, I am a diehard Iraqi fan. It's weird because I guess you could say out of every manga artist I've seen over the past 10 years, he's the only one that has very bold outlines to his characters. He does a lot of cross hatches as well. Cross hatches is something most American artists do within their anime and also within their comic books, um, as well as some that use mostly darks. Well, Japanese they use a lot of ink to represent darks, more than Americans do because most of their I shouldn't say most, every like majority of their mangas are all black and white anyway. But he tends to emphasize more on characters, like bold darks and character outlines. Hashtag, not hashtag, but cross hatching and regular hatching, as well as stiff, rigid outlines, as well as uh, opaque positioning and close-up shots, as well as impacts as well. Um, and is very good with the design and structure of character movements and body movements. Really good with that. Um, and you would only play a game like this if and only if you're a Rocky fan or you're a diehard JoJo fan. Because this is not a game that was made to be a very good game. It was a game that was an average game, like the Fist of the North Star game, but it was made specifically for the fandoms, for fans, because normal people wouldn't appreciate this game. This was made for people who are really into mangas, or if they're not into mangas, they're really into anime. So this is for the diehards that really want to enjoy a different venue with regards to what they saw in the mangas, with regards to what they saw in the animes. They want to explore a different realm of reality with all the characters that they grew up to love. So, if you haven't grown up with each of the characters from the manga, you haven't grown up with Kakyoin, you haven't grown up with Josuke, you haven't grown up with Foo Fighters, you haven't grown up with Abdul, you haven't grown up with Pippin, you haven't grown up with um, uh, Polnareff, you haven't grown up with Jotaro, you haven't grown up with um, Crazy Eyes. You haven't grew up with what's his name? Not Dio. Mr. King Crimson himself. You didn't grow up with Joe Lion um, and his crew, and you, or if you haven't even grew up with, I guess Steamball, Mr. Steamball Run storyline, and how those things came about, and or if not, Joseph Joestar, not Jonathan stuff. Like if you haven't grown up with all these characters and all the side characters, or Easy Deasy and all these other characters that you might have tend to forgot over the years, or Maria and a lot of characters from the JoJo world, some of the more forgettable characters that you might completely forget if someone don't remind you of it. Like ACDC was Easy Deasy and so on and so forth. Um, and Chili Peppers was also in the anime for part four, and a lot of stuff that like White Snake is from the band White Snake. A lot of stuff, bad guys as well as good guys, as well as normal people that you wouldn't consider within the JoJo world that you say, oh yeah, that guy was there. You know, would be forgettable. Like, but that's just the way it is. Like, if you don't if you don't remember someone like Maria or someone like Easy Deasy, like Easy Deasy, you remember someone like Dio, you remember Jotaro, you remember Josuke, but you don't remember Easy Deasy, like then maybe you're really not a JoJo fan. You're an anime fan, overall anime fan, but you're not a JoJo fan. And I don't recommend this to people who really aren't JoJo fans because you're not going to get anything out of it. You're not going to enjoy the ride. You're not going to enjoy what's going on because you're not a participant of this world. You don't enjoy this world. You just enjoy anime and manga overall, but you don't enjoy this type of world specifically. And characters, both the secondary, tertiary, and primary characters, you won't enjoy those things. You won't enjoy a character like Kusinada or a character like um, not Pornlore if I just said him. Rohan. You won't enjoy a character like Rohan. You won't enjoy what was her name? See, it's hard to remember names. Lisa. You won't remember Lisa. Lisa. Um, a lot of these things that a lot of characters you forget. A lot of people you forget. Even characters that aren't primary people within the story, that aren't the primaries or the secondaries. Even friends that they knew from, let's say, from high school or relatives of theirs that are part of the story that play a huge factor within the manga and stuff. Like Josuke's grandfather was a huge part of his storyline within the manga, but you hardly hear about him because he wasn't that relevant towards the overall story, except related towards Josuke's story in and of itself. But at the same time, you even though you could forget characters like that, they play a significant part within the story. If you didn't have Josuke's grandfather in that story, then part of Josuke's journey wouldn't have been as important as it was, and he wouldn't have matured to the level that he had matured to in the manga if it wasn't for Josuke's grandfather. And the same applies to someone like Pucci. Um, if it wasn't for Pucci to push someone like Jolene, um, and to push someone like Weather, the things wouldn't happen that they happen, and the things that happen in that world wouldn't have happened, and then we wouldn't get a part 7 or a part 8 the way we did. Actually, more like we wouldn't have gotten a part 8 if it wasn't for part 6 of what happened at the end of part 6 with Poochie, Jolene, and Weather. So the reason why they have part 6 on hiatus is probably because it wasn't doing that good of based on the anime in comparison to the other ones. That's why it's a hiatus, or it could be contract negotiations between the people who are making the anime. But regardless, a lot of people might not like that one. Might not like Stone Ocean as much as they liked Aravento or Vento Ario, however you want to call it. Um, because that wasn't associated with gangsters and it wasn't same as Josuke. It was just about a female in prison trying to escape a prison, and it was more secluded and stuff, limited. While the other Joestar stories, um, or Jotaro stories, Josuke stories, Joseph's story, and Jonathan's story were more like open world type. And I believe Stone Ocean was the first enclosed type story within the line of the JoJo Bizarre. Maybe that's the reason why it's the most limited one, and the people one that most people don't want to watch or aren't as interested in, equal to that of Steel Ball Run. But bizarrely enough, even though that's the case, it is the most brutal. I would say it again. It is the most brutal one coming towards the end of its story. And I mean, I know how JoJo just escalate with regards to brutality, but towards the end of the Stone Ocean, it's the most brutal one, and it has the most devastating consequence out of all the Jotaro story. It is probably the one that's the most darkest of every Jotaro stories. I mean, Dio is dark, but and King Crimson was dark, and the murderer in part four was dark. That Josuke fought Akira, if I remember his name. Yeah, but fighting against someone who was trying to bring Dio back towards the Stone Ocean, um, that didn't end well. Going towards its end, even though they end up victorious, because they always end up victorious. It's just not in the way that was very different from the other series. So that's all I'm going to say about that. I'm going to leave play as it goes. That's another reason why I like Stone Ocean. Is probably my second favorite JoJo of all the JoJos. Not because it's better than Arvento or Vento Ario, however you want to say it. Not because it's better than Stardust Crusaders, not because it's better than Josuke's story. I like it, and it's my second favorite because it was the only one to go to that place that none of the other series wanted to go to. Um, they all went to violent, very bloody, and very bizarre because they're all very bizarre. But none of them actually um, went to an area where it was questionable to everyone that read and finished off that story of where the hell the JoJo story would move on from there after the events of Stone Ocean. And I'm not going to say anything else with regards to that. So those people who say Stone Ocean is the greatest story, it may not be the greatest story. It may not even come in as the fifth best of the JoJo Bizarre stories. You got the Josuke, you got Jotaro, you got Joseph's story, you got um, hell, even Joe Lion might be better, but who knows? What I'm saying is Stone Ocean might be the actually sixth, if you really think about it, of the best JoJo stories, coming at number six, um, or even at number seven. But in comparison to every JoJo story, it's the number one for the most devastating ending and or unique ending from all the other JoJo story. That's why it's my number two because it did what the other stories did not do. Even though my favorite is actually part four. I fully agree with Araki. Part four is the best story that he's ever did, and it's so different and it's more localized. It's more urban. I like it a lot, and not because Araki likes it, but because it's very homely. It's not super open world, but it's not as enclosed as Stone Ocean is, and it's not has nothing to do with Jotaro or Jotaro's family. It was a different type of family completely, even though they're somewhat related. But then we went back to Jolene's, and um, yeah, in part six, and then we took it from there. And that's I guess nobody really wanted to go back to Jotaro's family line. They wanted to venture out into other people, but I don't see it that way. I saw it as um, it didn't make the cut when it comes to the other JoJo stories, but it made the cut when it comes to closing out for JoJo stories. It was far superior to many JoJo stories. It was a better ending than Part Four's ending. It was a better ending than Part Five's ending. It was a better ending than Part Part Seven's ending from the manga. Um, I believe it's a better ending than even Part Eight's ending. It's just not a better ending than Part Three's ending. It's not a better ending than Part One's ending, and it's not a better ending than well, it's a better ending than Part Two's ending. So there are only two stories within the JoJo mangas, from part one to part eight, that is better than, that is not better than. It's not better than part two when the Jotaro fought Dio. It's not better than part one when Jonathan Joestar first fought Dio, and it's not better than um, it's not better than. I'm really thinking about this because Kira, the way Kira died, that was kind of devastating. But yeah, that's it. I'm thinking about the different ways that they beat the bad guys in the different stories and the different revelations that were shown. I would say, yeah, though Stone Ocean wasn't that good of an overall manga, in the end, its ending was more superior to all the other JoJo story, with exception to part three when JoJo fought Dio at the end, and they closed it out with that last battle, and part one when Jonathan fought Dio. So I guess things related to fighting Dio was always going to be number one. But as great as Kira was within the story of part four, the ending wasn't that great. The overall journey in part four was great. But as an ending, the truest ending, the best ending to all JoJo's story is Stone Ocean, hands down. I'm only putting Jotaro's story and Jonathan's story ending above Stone Ocean simply because I'm agreeing with everybody else. But in all truth, in honesty, it's the only manga to have the most interesting ending. I don't mean most interesting like it's the greatest thing since sliced cake, but the most interesting and distinct and different ending than all the other JoJo stories. And those who watch that manga or read the manga, and by the time the anime gets up to that ending, they'll see what I mean. Because what happened in that manga specifically led to what would happen in part 8. Not so much part 7, but what happened in part 8. And I won't say what it's about, but I will say it has something to do with alternate reality or something like that. That's all I'll say with regards to that. Is it true or not is up to you to define what part 8 was all about anyway, and if it's even related to part 6 whatsoever. That's what Araki was intended for people to actually take from it. Is it somewhat related to part 6? If you say no, then fine, you could believe it. But if you find traces or anything within part 8 related to part 6, then you won't be totally wrong either. So let me just play this and stop talking about the ending to part 6, even though it's probably the most badass in all JoJo. Um, Even though it's not a better fight than Dio versus JoJo. But yeah, that ending is pretty good. So I'll get into this. This is the story of JoJo Bizarre Eyes of Heaven, the culmination of every single manga issue that Araki did, and it condensed them. It condensed all of them into a unique type of story that was never told before. So this game is its own type of story. And I wanted to say all this before I played this game so people could understand exactly what the stories of JoJo's are and what like Die Hard Gaming is with regards to JoJo anime and what this game is. And for those who try to disrespect Stone Ocean, just because the overall story isn't good, the ending is what sold the rest of that story. And it's the direct reason why other stories that came along, like 7 and 8, started to have their own life. And I won't, like I said, I won't spoil into reason why 7 and 8 are somewhat related to 6. You will have to see that for yourself. It's called JoJo Bizarre for a reason. Bizarrity happens for a reason, and it doesn't get much more bizarre than what happened at the end of part 6. I believe the definition word for the bizarre is 100% what part 6 was. At least what its ending to part 6 was. But you'll see for yourself once that manga, and actually once the anime is over. If you're not into manga and you want to just wait for the anime, you'll see for yourself come the end of that anime. So let me just play this.
3発入れず最後の攻撃だ。正真正銘最後の時間停止だ。キア、ガル、ディオ、オープンだゲーム。 そいつはこっちのセリフだぜ、ディオ。てめえ遅い。このディオにここまで。最高に遅いってやつ。遅い。逃がさん。てめえ逃がさん。ザワどんな気分だ、ディオ。お前に対する慈悲の気持ちは全くねえ。てめえをかわいそうとは全く思わねえ。しかしこのままおめえをなぶって始末するってやり方は俺自身の心に後味の良くねえものを残すぜ。その足が治癒するのに何秒かかる？3秒か4秒か。治ったと同時にスタープラチナをてめえに叩き込む。かかった気な。西部劇のガンマン風に言うと抜きな。どっちが素早いか試してみようぜと。コケにしやがって。しかし翔太郎、この土壇場に来てやはりお前は人間だ。ごく短い時の流れでしか生きない人間の考え方をする。後味の良くないものを残すとか、人生に悔いを残さないだとか、便所のネズミのクソにも匹敵するそのくだらないものの考え方が命取りや。このディオにはそれはない。あるのはシンプルなたった一つの思想だけだ。たった一つ。勝利して支配する、それだけよ。それだけが満足感よ。勝て てや方法なぞどうでもよいのだ。どうだこの血の目つぶしは。勝ったしねえ。バカなこのディオがこのディオが。
てめえの敗因はたった一つだぜディオ。たった一つのシンプルな答えだ。てめえは俺を怒らせた。
歌教員イギー、アブドゥル、仲間たちの尊い犠牲を乗り越えて丈太郎は宿敵ディオに勝利した。その肉体は朝日にさらされ塵と化して消滅した。100年にわたって生き続けてきた悪の帝王はついに滅びたのだ。その後
必要なものは私のスタンドである。必要なものは信頼できる友である。必要なものは極罪を犯した36名以上の魂である。必要なものは14の言葉である。必要なものは勇気である。朽ちていく私のスタンドは36の罪人の魂を集めて吸収。そこから新しいものを生み出すであろう。最後に必要なものは場所である。北緯28度24分、西経80度36分へ行き、次の新月の時を待て。それが天国の時であろう。
丈太郎、こんなところにおったか。病院から知らせがあった。ポルナレフの意識が戻ったらしい。早く行ってやろう。ああ、どうかしたのか。いや、何でもね。
見つけたぞ。スタープラチナの空城丈太郎。あのお方が始末しろとおっしゃるのも無理はない。強力無比なスタンドを操る男だが、所詮私たちのスタンドの敵ではない。
フランス国営航空92便パリ行きのお客様は18番ゲートへお急ぎください。
どうしてもフランスに帰るのか、ポルナレフ。もう身内はいないんじゃろう。よかったらわしの家のあるニューヨークに来ないか。
ジョースターさん、身内はいなくてもフランスは俺の祖国なんです。故郷には思い出がある。どこへ行っても必ず帰ってしまうとこなんです。何かあったら呼んでください。世界中どこでもすっ飛んで駆けつけますよ。
寂しくなるな。
辛いことがたくさんあったが、でも楽しかったよ。みんながいたからこの旅は楽しかった。
そうだな、楽しかった。心からそう思う。
それじゃあな、しみったれたじいさん、長生きしろよ。そしてそのケチな孫よ、俺のこと忘れるなよ。
また会おう。わしのことが嫌いじゃなけりゃな、間抜け面。
忘れたくてもそんなキャラクターしてねえぜ、てめえはよ。元気でな。
あばよ。
いた、見つけた。
あ？
ん？
なるほどな、なんか笑っちまうぜ。そのガタイの良さ。二人ともジョースターさんの子孫ってすぐにわかるぜ。
ジジイの知り合いか？
いや、知らん。確かにわしはジョースターじゃが、あんたはどなたかな？
おっと失礼。俺の名は
ジョースターさん、ジョー太郎。
ポルナレフ。どうしたんじゃ、その怪我は。何があった？
何が起きてるのかわからねえ。わからねえが、畜生。敵だ、敵がいるぞ。
ことじゃ。
敵だと言ってるだろうが。気をつけろ、襲ってくるぞ。
マジシャンズレッド。アブドゥル、イギ。お前たちは死んだはず。これは一体。状況がよく飲み込めんが、ここで戦うことはできん。無関係の人間を大勢巻き込むことになる。場所を変えるんじゃ。
なんてこった。奴らもう追いついてきやがったのか。こうしちゃやれねえ。急がなくちゃよ。
やれやれ。ポルナレフ、どういうことだ。何が起きている。
知らねえよ。フランス行きの便に乗ろうとしたら、あいつらが現れていきなり襲ってきたんだ。
追ってきたか。
まだ逃げるのか。
いや、ここで迎え撃つ。逃がさんぞ。あのお方にガイナス愚か者ども。このモハメド・アブドゥルが焼き尽くしてくれる。
あのお方だと。
お前アブドゥルなのか。本当に。
下がってろジジイ。何が起きてるのかさっぱりわからんが、今一つだけははっきりしている。奴らの殺気が本物ってことだけはな。
ジョースターさん、ここは俺が行かせてもらうぜ。
完全に治すのは自分の治癒力。 OK。
アブドゥルとイギーは俺のために死んだんだ。てめえらみてえな偽物はぶった切ってやる。
てめえら何者なんだ。
あのお方の邪魔になるものは消す。炎に包まれていた。
やれやれ、手加減はできねえぞてめえ。
まだ戦える。マジシャンズレッドは始まりを暗示し、始まりである炎を操る。シルバー出版して弾き返してやれ。
二人で行くぜ。おう。
甘いぜ。
このままでは
それ以上は持って逃げろ。
援護しよう。よし、レッドバイト。くそ。
おめえの分まで戦えってか。くそ。甘いぜ。まだやれるぜ。もうダメだ。甘いぜ。
やれやれ。 さて、てめえらの正体を調べさせてもらおうか。じじい。
わしのハーミットパープルの出番じゃな。
なんだこの光は。アバドゥ、イギー。
光を発して消えよった。一体奴ら何者なんじゃ。
あいつらは本物だぜ、ジョースターさん。俺はどちらともやり合ったことがあるからわかる。間違いねえ。あいつらは本物のアブドゥルとイギーだ。
バカな、そんなはずは。いや、しかし。
誰だ。
さすがだな。あの二人を退けると。
歌教員。それにてめえはンドゥール。
何を驚いている。アブドゥルたちと同じだよ。僕とこのンドゥールはあのお方。お前たちを始末する。
カキオイ、お前もかよ。どうな。
下がれポルナレフ、次はわしがやろう。今度は逃がさん。ハーミットパープルで洗いざらい吐き出させてやるからのう。
やれやれだ。
相手が勝ち誇った時、そいつはすでに敗北している。 手が勝ち誇った時、そいつはすでに敗北している。
やれやれだ。
歌教員とンドゥールのコンビだと。
距離を置かずにガンガン攻めるぞ。
無理だな。お前たちは近寄ることもできない。
狙い撃ちにしてくれるわ。オープンだゲーム。てめえ行きますよ、よかろう。しかしかよいすぎたの。行くぞ。
行くぜ。まだ大丈夫だ。
心を切らせてよ。
少しまだ致命傷じゃない。どこまでもやられる。
戻さなくては。
行くぞ。
行くぜ。
行きますよ、よかろう。これは答える。
どうしたんじゃ。
大した怪我ではない。近づく前にやっ行け。
きますよ、よかろう。
言ったはずだ。
これで我々の
歌教員とンドゥールのコンビだと。
距離を置かずにガンガン攻めるぞ。
無理だな。お前たちは近寄ることもできない。
オープンだゲーム。
行くぜ。まだ大丈夫だ。
ここまでか。行きますよ、よかろう。負けが決まったわけじゃない。そう簡単にハイエロバンドは撤回。
これは答える。
戻さなくちゃ。
少し食らった。
あなたの分まで戦う。
なんじゃ答える。 致命傷じゃない。行くぞ。行くぜ。あなたの分まで戦う。そう簡単には逃げる。慌てるんじゃない。ハイエロファントの結界。エメラルドスプラッシュ。さなげたスティア。オービットパープル。太陽エネルギー波紋。どうしなんだ。無理してんじゃねえ。一体何が起こったのだ。行くぜ CG。 任せろオービットパープル。オーマイガー。やれやれ。なんてな。今じゃ。オラオラオラオラオラオラジジイだぜ。遠距離スタンドコンビがこれほどまで。やはり強いな。だがあのお方のために捧げると誓った我が身、今はまだ果てるわけにはいかん。この場は一時引かせてもらうぞ。さらばだジョースターども。逃げられた。いや、歌教員は捕まえたぜ。ンドゥールのことは後回しだ。歌教員をハーミットパープルで調べてみよう。待ちな。また新しいのが出てきやがった。誰だてめえは。おめえはさっき空港で会った。ジョセフのじいさんよ、これはあんたの力じゃどうにもならねえ。俺に任せてもらおうか。この聖なる遺体の力でよ、あんたらの仲間を。なんじゃと。聖なる遺体。ここは丈太郎。それにジョースターさん、ポルナレフ。歌教員、正気に戻ったのか。そうだ、ディオの能力見破ったんです。奴の能力を。落ち着くんじゃ歌教員。ディオとの戦いはもう終わっておる。あんた何者じゃ。なぜわしの名を知っておる。今歌教員に何をしたんじゃ。一体何が起きとるんじゃ。待て、待ちな。あんたも落ち着けって。
ああ、自己紹介が遅れちまったな。俺の名はロバート・イーオー・スピードワゴン。あんたたちに頼みがあってここまで来た。
スピードワゴンだと？
そりゃスピードワゴン財団の創設者の名前だろうが。分かったぞ。てめえ新手のたかりだな。
オーマイガー！いや違うぞポルナレフ。なんてこった。思い出したわい。確かにあんたは昔見たスピードワゴンの若い頃の写真と同じ顔じゃ。
俺の顔を知ってるのか？なら話が早くて助かるぜ。こいつは聖なる遺体と呼ばれているものだ。
聖なる遺体？
わかりやすく言や、大昔に死んだ偉い人のミイラってことだよ。俺はこの聖なる遺体に導かれて様々な時代を渡り歩いてきた。今世界にはとんでもねえほど巨大な危機が迫っていて、その影響で異変がそこら中で発生してる。そこの歌教員ってあんちゃんみたいにな。
つまり本来死んだはずの歌教員やアブドゥルたちが異変のせいで蘇ったというのか。
構いません。僕の記憶はリオの攻撃を食らってタンクに叩きつけられた後、それがなぜジョースターさんたちを襲ったのか、僕も本当のことを知りたい。
歌教員、お前さっきあの大方とか言っていたが、そいつは何者なんだ？それがスピードワゴンの言う危機ってやつなのか？
わからない。何も覚えていない。
それであんたの頼みとは？
単刀直入に言う。聖なる遺体を集めるのに協力してくれ。聖なる遺体は全部で9個の部位が存在する。遺体には不思議なパワーがあるが、あと8個集めると1人分の遺体となって真のパワーを発揮するんだ。そうすれば全ての異変を鎮め危機を撃退できるはずだ。多分実は俺にもよくわからねえんだ。遺体を持つようになってから耳元でささやく声が聞こえるようになってよ。その声に導かれて俺はここまで来たんだぜ。
おいおいおい、こいつ大丈夫かよ。
まあ待て、一通り聞こうじゃないか。
俺が元いた時代はよ、異変のせいでめちゃくちゃになっちまった。けど俺だけじゃ何もできねえ。この聖なる遺体はあんたたちと出会うように俺をここまで導いた。つまりあんたたちはこの世界に訪れつつある危機に対抗する力を持ってるってことなんだ。多分
あのな、
突拍子もねえって思うだろうがよ。
頼む、俺と一緒に来て戦ってくれ。
シュールよの。散々奇妙な冒険をしてきたつもりだったが、今度のはまた一段とおかしな話やわい。みんなどう思う？
やれやれ、とんでもなくイカれた話だな。
Now you see, this is when Jotaro says the craziest thing I've ever heard, then it is the craziest thing that's ever been in JoJo Bizarre. You see, this whole anomaly thing came out way before something like the MCU became even a thing within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that multiverse stuff. I'm not talking before like a movie like Iron Man or before Captain America the First Avenger. I'm talking about before the first Avengers movie, before 2012. Hell, even before the Thor movie came out. I might even be wrong, maybe even before Iron Man came out. This was a thing within JoJo. Not just stopping time, not just using time with abilities, but the abilities to move through time. But it was never present within the JoJo manga until, I believe, I believe since part 4, it became a reality. Because the first part 1, nothing there. Part 2, also nothing there. Just pillar men that could live forever with regards to the power that they have. And part 3, kind of see immortality with JoJo, and well, with Dio, and with certain characters as well. And then in part 4, that's when you really got introduced to the ability to travel through time with Kira's ability, because they already experimented with the use of time for stopping time and speeding up time, and using time to create certain elemental effects with regards to what happened in part 2. But no one ever traveled through time before. Even with some powers like Josuke to repair what was already done, to undo something that was done already. Like Josuke's powers, if something happens to something, he could undo it, undo time, not with time. But it was part 4, at the end of part 4, the ability to travel through time was the first introduction to that. And I believe in the manga, if you go back to the manga, not the release of the anime, that came out way before 2010 in the manga. So that was something that existed before, I believe, even before Iron Man 1 came out. And I believe Iron Man 1 came out in 2008, or was it 2005? So even before the first Iron Man movie, which had nothing to do with time travel, or the first Thor movie, which has nothing to do with time travel, or the first Captain America movie, which had one of the Infinity Stones and have the ability to travel through space, but had nothing to do with time travel or multiverse or anything like that. But it was kind of hinted it was there, but not really whatsoever. The idea of multiverse and time travel was something that's been around in science fiction novels and stuff for generations. But with regards to to something like anomalies of time that makes ripple effects with regards to breaking cycles of universe. It was something that came out way before within the JoJo manga, before the MCU came out. And yes, there are other things that came out before the JoJo manga came out that spoke with regards to universe paradox, so on and so forth. Even a movie like something called Millenniums or some Millennia or something like that. A movie like Chris Christopherson movie way back in the days. If you can even find that movie anymore, it talked about paradox. But yeah, before the MCU even became multiverse and anomalies and all this stuff happened, it was present within this manga before of possible things. So when Jotaro says it's craziest thing I've ever heard, it literally is, because moving forward from where JoJo originally came out, 1, 2, and 3, the craziest thing you could think of, all the way from part 1, part 2, part 3, and even part 4, was going back in time and undoing time. That was the craziest thing JoJo ever experienced, undoing time by Kira. But things like anomalies and multiverses and people coming back to life from the dead, with relations to tears in time and bodies of creatures or people that are linked to other times, that allow someone who's dead in one world to come back to life due to anomalies, was something that was never done. Even in MCU, something like that isn't done. I don't think anyone has done something like that yet, even in movies or manga, that a person can come back to life if they're linked to an anomaly in another world or another period of life, where a person is either alive, or a portion of their soul is, or an attachment of someone who's was great and had the capabilities to transcend worlds. That way he could bring back life, or a part of a person's body that's able to transcend worlds or move through worlds, has the ability to bring life back, because that person or that thing doesn't follow your normal rules of logic. So anything it comes in contact with will either automatically come back to life, because it in itself doesn't follow the rules of logic, because it's not even from the world that they're from. So something like that hasn't even been done in movies yet, to be honest with you. So I just want to say, like, when it comes to Bizarre Adventures, this game has upped the ante with regards to the craziest thing that happened in JoJo Bizarre story so far. Not crazy in the stuff that happened in part 6, at the end, part 6, but it is pretty crazy, because you think of it from this point of view. These are characters from part 3, Stardust Crusaders. This is way before Jotaro became in his late 20s, mid to late 20s, and have a kid that's young at home. Way before Joseph here becomes a really old man in part 4. And way before Jolene grows up to be a teenager. So this is the craziest thing. Before time travel, before the whole thing with Kira even becomes a reality, to Jotaro, this is the craziest thing he's ever heard, because he hasn't experienced crazier stuff yet. And the fact that even if he did experience crazier stuff, it is the craziest thing, because it's on a totally different timeline than everything else that's going on within the JoJo story. Like, this guy Speedwagon has literally just interrupted what happened in part 3, at the end of part 3 with defeating Dio, and change how everything was going moving forward due to the anomaly. So I believe the events and I'm not 100% sure because I haven't gotten there yet in this game. I believe the events in part 6 has to do with something with regards to this. That's why I keep telling people over and over again, you're sleeping on part 6, because if the people in part 6, and I'm assuming that's what's going on here, if what happened in part 6 is what's affecting every other parts of JoJo, from part 1 to part 2 to part 3 to part 4 to part 5 to part 7 to part 8, if they're going with the logic of what happened in part 6, and it could have been the effect that caused a ripple for certain other events to happen that's now occurring in part 6. I mean, not occurring in this game right now. So I believe that's what's going on, because the only logical sense where something like anomalies and alternate people of alternate self, or people coming back to life that I know of, that has nothing to do with the power of the mask, that's within part 1 and part 3, then it has to be associated with part 6. There's something that happened in part 6 that led to, at the end of part 6, that led to the events that are happening right now in this game. At least that's what I'm assuming. Because I'm not 100% sure what happened at the end of part 8. So I could be completely wrong, and it has something to do that what happened at the end of part 8. But I could be right that it's something that happened at the end of part 6. It's either something that happened at the end of part 8 for why these anomalies are happening in this game, or something that happened at the end of part 6. Because I know it has nothing to do with part 7. So it's either something that happened at the end of part 6, or something that happened at the end of part 8. So I'll continue the story on.
俺はあの男の言うことが全く理解できねえし信用できねえ。しかしよ、書き音を戻してくれたことは確かなんだよな。
僕は信じます。もちろん信じざるを得ません。
アブドゥルやイギー、ウンドゥールたちが襲ってきたのも紛れもない事実。よし、いいじゃろう、スピードワゴンのじいさん。というのも
ありがてえ、助かるぜ。
なんじゃ。
これは聖なる遺体が共鳴してるんだ。近くにもう一つ聖なる遺体があるぞ。
何？
やはりこの近くに遺体があるみてえだ。手分けして探してくれ。
俺が作った商売の流れなんだよ。どうや。 さあ入ってくれ。案内しよう。どうや。 さあ入ってくれ。案内しよう。たっぷりだもの。私が東方フルーツ屋の4代目、東方典助だ。どうや。俺が作った商売の流れな。どうや。私が東方フルーツ屋の4代目、東方典助だ。また来いよ。
これは。その遺体はあんたを選んだんだ。なくさねえようにしっかり持ってなよ。
これは何じゃ。
まるで光でできた。
この光のひびは聖なる遺体が生み出す現象だ。光のひびの中に入れば別の時代へ移動することができるんだ。よし、 それじゃあ行くぜ。俺についてきな。
なんじゃポルナレフ、何を笑っておる。
いや、アブドゥルとイギーが戻ってくるかもしれねえ。そう思ったら嬉しくなってよ。それにまたみんなと旅ができるなんて思ってなかったし。
僕もです。
ああ、そうだな。
やれやれだぜ。
And that's why I'm gonna end this video. So for each chapter, I'll end the video before I get to the end. I'm not sure exactly how many chapters there are. There'll probably like 10 or 12 chapters. I'm gonna make at least, or maybe not even 10 or 12. Maybe there are 8 chapters total. Just like there is 8 manga types related to 8 different stories. Maybe they have 8 chapters. But if it's more than 8 chapters, it'll probably be like 10 chapters, which is good because even though the maps aren't great and even though the fighting isn't great, the story, this is a story game, so the story is great. So I'm gonna continue that tomorrow. Actually, no, not tomorrow. I gotta get into the manga stuff, and the manga are the aliens area. Magician Kuno sees everything, and what's the name of Arcade, the Arcade one. So those are new mangas that came out about anywhere from July and before July, May, June. No, not May. June, July, and August. Mostly June and July. It came out recently. It came out in June and July. And some might have come out in May. So mangas that came out over the past 3 months, those are the ones I'm checking out to see if they even are going to have futures. Because not every time I make these videos, it's about anime or playing anime games or any games relation or just talking about animations. I actually dive, well, sometimes, not all the time, I dive deep into the mangas to see if those mangas are going to become animations one day. And based on the storylines, I could tell the deepness of the story and the richness of the story. If it has grand webs, and what I mean by grand webs, grand spider webs, like universal spider webs at a cosmic level. For instance, one character can be an entire planet, and another character can be an entire planet, and another character, and another character. And it's like that to that grand scale. Like you have a character that's has so much deep history to them. You could literally make an entire book of about just one character. And if you have multiple characters within a story that has this same lengthy book towards their past and what their experiences are in life, then you have multiple different planets. And then eventually, within your story, you have an entire solar system of characters that you can flesh out for years, even more than years, decades down the road. If you're able to create such powerful characters and stories attached to just individuals within an overall arcing story, because those characters would just be in a story, a greater story than their personal stories, but their stories, no matter how great it is, will eventually lead to greater stories or their greater stories were something that was far beyond the current stories. It's just that they were able to overcome those stories and now connect it to a more unique story moving forward. So that's what I believe the MCU is. Constellations, like constellation of stars, but instead of constellation of just stars, constellation of connecting stars, and each star represents a specific story type, and but they're all connected to each other. They all serve a purpose to a greater end, and eventually in the MCU they're gonna get to that greater end. And same for JoJo. It all has a connective purpose to the greater end. And I'm not sure if Araki's completely done with JoJo, like 100%. But I believe after he did what he did in part 6 of the manga, the ripple effect affected that of part 7 and affected that of part 8. So whatever he ended part 8 with, it has something to do with part 6 and the other ones before them. So it's not just that he just did his last JoJo manga. It has something to do with his journey from the first very JoJo manga to his last one. So at least part 8 has that going for him, that it was able to close out the last chapters of Araki's JoJo's journey. Um, and maybe because I haven't even finished that yet. I haven't even finished that manga, so I need to finish up that manga, that last one, with Araki's work. That very, very last JoJo manga of Joe Lyon's last journey. And I have to revisit Stone Ocean. I already know what happens in Stone Ocean, but I'm not going to say. I'm going to say spoilers with regards to certain things in this game, but not with regards to that. If you haven't seen the anime Stone Ocean, go see it. It's not finished yet, but I highly recommend once you do see the end, you'll see what I mean. Like Stone Ocean is underrated, um, for reasons, good reasons, because it's very slow start, leading to its middle, and many people say and believe that it's the weaker of the JoJo stories, but unlike the other JoJo stories, it's the only JoJo story, the only one that has the most devastating and crucial ending to a JoJo Bizarre Adventure that affects other JoJo Bizarre Adventure stories, both past and future, as well as this game I was playing right here. So that's why I give Stone Ocean, the one with Jolene, high respect, because it was able to achieve something that the others weren't able to achieve. Go beyond its story and transcend itself into other stories, even though characters and situations and events are present in other stories. The ripple effect of what they did caused other things to happen. So that's what Part 6 has going for it, and Part 8 has the ending of Araki's journey going for it, and Part 3 has the whole Dio thing going for it, and Part 4 has the first introduction of, I believe, moving through time associated with it, not just stopping time, but actually time travel type or dimension hopping, not just slowing down time like Dio, or rewinding time, or speeding up time. Um, so Part 4 has that going for it. Um, and Part 1 and 2 don't really have that much going for it, other than introduce the essential components of energy that you could use for an ability, including transcending those abilities into stands. So Part 1 just has the introduction to a JoJo. Part 2 is just like introduction of energy and energy types, which doesn't have much going for it, neither 1 or 2, other than those things. But Part 3 is where JoJo really started to kick off. And Part 4 is where JoJo really took a different turn from its original predecessors. I mean, not predecessors, from his previous, well, yeah, predecessors, um, and took a different turn. So part three, part four, um, part six, and I would say part eight are the most unique of the JoJo stories because they're all very different from the norm. Like every JoJo story is different. One is different from two, two is different from three, three is different from four, four is different from five, five is definitely different from six, and six is different from seven, and seven is definitely different from eight. So they're all very different stories, but there are only four stories within JoJo universe that they distinctly have a type of perfume about them that's more potent and more powerful than all the other JoJos. Specifically related to Jotaro and Dio, specifically related to Josuke and his neighborhood, his town that he lives in. That's different from Dio and different from Jotaro. Specifically related to what happened in Stone Ocean, both the era that they were in or the type of enemies that they were fighting and the devastating ending conclusion and its ripple effect that affected future works, as well as part eight, which is very different from part seven and six and five, but have components of them, but it ending as well. But should I say its beginning rather than its ending is what makes sells part eight more than anything. How it starts off and how it continues to a story as it starts off. You want to know what the hell is going on at the beginning of the story. You really do want to know because it's bizarre and you don't understand why the dude walks around wearing a sailor's outfit or what's going on in the story. And at a certain point, at the halfway point of part eight, you start to feel that you're not interested anymore until it kicks you in the gut coming towards the end. So, at least those four stories that are very different from the other JoJo story, very unique way of doing from other JoJo story, um, are bad in their story development and characters, but are also the ones that are probably the worst are probably the ones also the ones that have the most devastating and different type of aesthetic towards their ending and their beginnings. Um, that's why those ones that are considered really bad will always be in my top five list of JoJos because unlike the other JoJos, you kind of see them coming from a mile away. Um, but how a manga starts and how a manga ends is very important. And if you can get a good opening running good and a good ending prologue good, a good prologue and a good epilogue good, um, then you're gonna have issues no matter if it's a movie art or whatever. And so that's at least what part six and part eight had going for it. How Jolene got into Stone Ocean Prison and how the story ended were good. How Joe Lion got discovered and how that story ended were good. You were intrigued to know what the hell, how he ended up where he did on and not knowing who he was, so on and so forth. So you're trying to investigate and find out what's going on. And the same is the story for Star Platinum. You want to know why Jotaro ended up in prison. You think he's devil haunts him or something. And towards the end, where Dio got his comeuppance up and he died after such a long journey. And also, yeah, so that's what I. And the same for part four, how you meet Josuke at the beginning, um, which was probably the most normal of all the other stories. Its beginning was normal, but then it wasn't really that normal because it shows someone with a severed hand and blood running down a severed hand, even though the neighborhood was totally a total um, opposite of the nature of what was going on in the house. Um, one was complete light and the other was complete dark. So it was a mix of both two different power types, both two different balance of energies. That's what the anime was. The anime was very bright, um, and the manga was also kind of different from the original aesthetic of the part three. So that's why I say those are the four best of the JoJo stories. Not because they were such a great story or they had such better characters. It's because they were able to execute more things than others without um, like dropping the ball with regards to certain things that they're supposed to live up to. Like the story in part six is terrible. Um, so he didn't live up to that. And the characters aren't that great, so he didn't live up to that. But if you get past the story and the characters, then everything it did live up to, and it did get right. A good beginning, a good middle, and a good ending. So an overall parts in his story were the best part about part six, not the story as it's going from beginning to end, but the moments in part six were the best part in part six, not the overall story. And the same thing for Joe Lion's story. It's the moments in Joe Lion's story that were best part in it, not the overall story. But in contrast, the overall story of Stardust Crusaders were more important than its moments, um, even though it also had moments that were far more memorable as well. So it managed to get two of those things done. And the same thing for part four. It wasn't so much of its story that was important, but its moments were also important. So I believe the only true story within the JoJo's history and past that won both overall story and moments were Stardust Crusaders storyline and the first one, which was the beginning first story of Jonathan's. So that's the only reason why JoJo's story, Jotaro's story, is always above that of Josuke's story because the main character is always greater. The main bad guy is always greater. The overall journey was greater. So many things were greater. But as a design, as a character design and artwork um, and personal feelings towards the characters and everything at the end of the story, part four is better than part three. When you're talking about personal connections towards characters, as well as the drawing style, part four was better than part three. And then in reverse, that's when you would say part four was better than part three. So it's a balancing act between part three and part four being the number one. And then you would have the the third of the stories being part one, the very first JoJo manga with with Jonathan, being your number three, and then your number four and five would probably be the story of Joline and Jolene, which is part six and part eight. And most people will say, well, Vento Ario part five was better than anything that anyone's saying, but you have to understand that was from the point of view of gangsters and so on and so forth trying to survive in Italy, um, which was interesting as an opening to his overall story. But as it was leading close towards its middle of its story, going towards its end, it started to fall off not only in the manga but also in the anime as well. So the story ended poorly. It had a good beginning, opening, and a good middle, but its ending was bad. Just like how Stone Ocean had a good beginning, middle, with how she got set up, but it also, unlike part five, had a great ending. Stone Ocean had a slow start, but at least ended off great, whereas Vento Ario had a good start, and you would think it would end it greatly, but as dramatic as everything was, when you close out the last page of the book and then you rethought about it, the fight, and anything that was going on, it's really not that great. And you could see that once you watch the anime. But yeah, as overall story, Vento Aria will always be better than 6 and better than 8 as an overall story. It's just that its moments were not as powerful as those in that of 6 or if that in that of 8. And if you've read the manga of Stone Ocean, you will see what I mean. The anime does not do justice to what is going on in Stone Ocean. It really doesn't. And if you really think that what's going on in Vento Ario is better than what's going on in Stone Ocean, then you really don't know what the hell you're talking about. Because that means you really don't understand the anime whatsoever at all. That how they screwed it up. They screwed up Stone Ocean. And I think that's another reason why Stone Ocean has been on hiatus and is not finished completed series, because they screwed it up. If you read Stone Ocean manga, you will see how much more, like 5 times or 4 times more powerful that manga is compared to that piece of garbage that they made within that anime. So that's all I got to say about that. The same as for Joe Lyon's story. If you read the manga, you won't have any feelings towards it. You may say, "Oh, this is boring," but as you go to past the beginning that you were intrigued about and get to the middle, you say, "Oh boy, this is boring." You know, it had a good opening, but it's boring. But as you're going towards the end, it started to pick up again. So thankfully, its beginning leading to its middle is good, but its middle was dragging and it's boring, and it'll start to piss you off as you're going slowly towards the end and you want to stop reading it and go do other things. But before it ended, it started to pick up real fast and really good. So that's why I say, like, there are a lot of people that don't know jack squat about anything because they're not paying attention to, as you flip a page, what the hell is being said, what's going on within the image, why they're doing it, and you're not playing out exactly what's going on within the image and what's going on within the text and languages and what's being said and playing out the story in your head based on what you're seeing. You're just seeing, well, that's not good. That doesn't seem right. I don't like that. The whole point of being a creative designer or being a creative artist or having interest within fantasy and reality or being interested in anything fantasy related or being interested in sci-fi or anything that falls into fantasy is because you're supposed to use your imagination. If you are not using your imagination when you watch things related to imagination, then you just expect people to feed you entertainment for entertainment's sake. If something is not feeding you entertainment for entertainment's sake, then you're not using your imagination. And if you're saying, well, why should I have to use my imagination and do the work? I'm just here to chill. That's the whole point of why it's called having an imagination. If they do all the work for you, then that means you cannot create anything based on what you're seeing to entertain you, based on what you like. You're just getting something that they give to you, and you taste it. Oh, this tastes good. I want more of it. But you have no thoughts with regards to what you just tasted. It just tastes good. That's all it is. It's like eating a Mars bar or a Kit Kat or a Snickers or something. If it tastes bad, you don't want to eat it anymore. You don't give a damn about why the peanuts taste that way or why the flavor is this way or why is it crunchy or why is it made this way. If it doesn't satisfy your interest based on what you just taste, it's not good. Naturally, you're just paying attention to the natural part of what is good and what isn't good. You're not paying attention to the details. You don't give a damn about the color of the wrappings, the design of the packages, how the actual chocolate is made and looked and shaped, and anything else. You just care about the taste itself. That's all. And if you're saying, well, isn't that the point of actually eating chocolate? You don't worry about the name or anything. If the chocolate doesn't taste good, then it all goes down the shitter. Then yeah, but once you eat it, and if the chocolate is still good, are you gonna move on to another chocolate that tastes good? No, you're gonna stay there and pay attention to that type of chocolate, and continue to eat that type of chocolate. And in order for you to continue to eat that type of chocolate, it's not simply about the taste of the chocolate. It's that the image, the design of the chocolate, the look of the chocolate, the taste of the chocolate, it has an identity. And that's how you can identify it when you go into the store, because it has looks, feel, shape, size, and that's what it represented. If it was just a piece of chocolate thrown into a silver wrapping with no label and no specific design or name on it, you will slowly start to not be interested in that chocolate over time, regardless of how good it tastes, because it's common in everything else except its taste. The whole part of branding is not to be common in everything else. It's to keep you, that person, engaged and be there continuously, consecutively, by doing additional other things. Now, me, I'm not too worried about branding that much, because I'm not going to get into that until deeper as I go, and that means I'll have to put away certain type of jobs with regards to what I'm doing if I'm going to get into career in gaming. That's down the road, like way down the road. But once I get there, it's going to fall into the same category of branding. So that's what I'm trying to say. I know how long-winded this, but yeah, those are my mangas. Those are my mangas related to Araki's work. That are in my top 5. There's the first one. There's part 3. There's part 4, and then there's 6, and then there's 8. And even though 8 is the weakest of the link, and 6 is the second weakest, the truth is 6 and 8 have probably the best moments, or if not the best endings, of all JoJo series. And if you don't believe that, and if you don't trust that, if you don't know that, or say that's true, then that means you've never read the ending to 6, or looked at the moments within 6, the manga itself. Don't pay attention to anime. Majority of the time, they get the shit wrong in the anime. It should be obvious when people try to make live action and turn it into games, or obvious when something goes from animation or comic book and try to make an anime of it. Very rarely do they get it right. Like X-Men, they got that right, but they didn't get the Spider-Man one back in the days correct, you know. So it's very rarely when they try to take something from a different franchise genre and then turn it into something else in a different genre. They rarely get it right. And the same that applies to the Stone Ocean anime. They didn't get that right. That's why that one is in hiatus and it's taking long. So I'm going to end it right here. And it could be other reasons why Stone Ocean is on delay, but that's one of the reasons why it's on delay. It's not that the manga was that bad. It's just that they didn't do it the way the manga was done. Like if you go look at the manga, you see that a lot of things look the same, but it's the moment that sells the story. The moments, the overall story, and their moments that sell the story. If you don't include the critical moments and critical situations within an anime that are essential, and meld them into the overall story, then people are going to go away. They're not going to know what's going on. Same as eating that candy. If it's just about the taste, eventually over time people just put away the candy without finishing the rest. Whereas at the beginning they used to eat the whole damn thing, but before they get to the end, they're just going to put it away because there's nothing else. There's no Lissan logo. There's no shape anymore. It's still in the same old silver packaging with nothing. So that's what I'm trying to say. So that's it for this video, and if not tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, I'll continue this. I really want to get into Distal Elysium. I really want to get into AI Somnium. files. But to be honest with you, I've been holding off JoJo for quite some time. For months. I mean, way before I did Elden Ring, way before I did Horizon Forbidden West. A long time, and I'm talking here a lot, but a very long time. I really should log off right now. But I just wanted to state these things with regards to this game. So you could get off your ass and don't pay attention to what's going in the manga. Don't pay attention to what's going on in the anime. Read the JoJo Bizarre Stone Ocean manga. Read the JoJo Bizarre Part 4 manga. Read this the Steel Ball Run, and read the last one. Read the Joe Lion story as well. Read those ones before you get into the anime. Because if you just get into the anime, you'll say, oh, this is not that great compared to the other animes. You just don't understand that they screwed it up. So at least you know, if you've never actually read the manga, you know that someone who did read the manga of Stone Ocean and of Part 4 and of Star Crusaders, which ones they screwed up and which ones they didn't. And for Stone Ocean, they kind of screwed that one up. Even though they'll say that they got most of the more critical and important parts into the story that they did, those critical parts and story moments that they took didn't connect towards the overall story as well. Because if you just put in critical moments with not a connection towards the overall story, and you make characters look a certain way and be placed at a certain place, and it feels like either it's convoluted or it's not filled up enough, you're going to get that lag all the time, 9 times out of 10. And you'll be able to see it once you go and read Part 7, Part 8 as well. And if you decide to read Part 6. And that's all I can say with regards to that. They kind of screwed up Part 6, the anime that's going on right now. And hopefully they are trying to get it right. And if they do get it right, great. But if it has nothing to do with the anime, then it just has to do with budget and likes and subscribes and all that type of crazy stuff. Then it's simply because they didn't understand the generation that they're in right now, or they didn't set up the story the way it should have been set up based on the manga. Like most people, when they do an anime, they make it like word for word the way it goes in the manga, and image for image the way it goes in the manga. But I don't think that's what they did whatsoever at all. I think they tried to do that, but they didn't understand which were the actual ones that mattered and which were the actual ones that were important. So that's all I got to say. I'm done with this. I'm done talking. I'm either going to do this tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. Most likely I'll do this tomorrow and continue this tomorrow, because I'm fascinated with regards to the story in here, not because of the fighting, not because of anything else, just the story, because this is a totally different JoJo story that's within this game itself, and it's very different and it's very unique, and it encompasses all 8 JoJo stories in one game. So I'm very interested.